ready for a deep dive into the early days of Apple.
We're talking floppy disks, dial-up modems, and a little garage that became the launch pad for a tech revolution.
We've got excerpts from Accidental Millionaire by Lee Butcher, ready to uncover some fascinating stories about Steve Jobs and the birth of a legend.
And it all starts in a world where computers were these massive, expensive machines hidden away in labs and universities.
It's hard to imagine now with a smartphone in every pocket.
Butcher does a great job setting the stage, taking us back to this pre-PC era.
He asks a really intriguing question right off the bat. Was Steve Jobs truly a visionary? Or was he just a guy who got lucky at the right time?
That question really gets to the heart of the book.
To answer it, we need to look at the lightning-fast evolution of technology that set the stage for Apple.
The invention of the silicon chip was a game changer, shrinking these room-sized computers down to something you could hold in your hand.
And all of a sudden, the race was on to see who could make the most of this new technology.
Silicon Valley became the epicenter for this new breed of innovator.
It was a melting pot of ideas and ambition.
And a lot of that energy can be traced back to one man, William Shockley.
Remember him from your physics class?
Nobel Prize winner, moved to California to start his own company, Shockley Semiconductor.
He wanted to build the future of electronics.
Okay, so Shockley was a brilliant scientist, but maybe not the best manager.
Butcher talks about these 8 engineers, the traitorous 8, who left Shockley to start their own company, Fairchild Semiconductor.
And Fairchild was like the MIT of Silicon Valley.
It trained an entire generation of engineers and entrepreneurs, many of whom went on to found their own companies.
One of those companies was Intel, the folks who gave us the microprocessor, the brains of every computer we use today.
Talk about a ripple effect.
It's incredible how one small company, Fairchild, had such a massive impact on the trajectory of technology.
Absolutely.
And it's within this world of rapid innovation that a young, mischievous Steve Jobs enters the scene.
He was fascinated by electronics even as a kid.
There's this great anecdote in the book about him cold calling William Hewlett, one of the founders of HP, to ask for spare parts for a project.
Wait, really?
He just picked up the phone and called William Hewlett.
That's classic Jobs. Bold, audacious, not afraid to break the rules.
It makes you wonder what Hewlett thought of this pushy teenager on the other end of the line.
Right.
And then we have Steve Wozniak, a quiet genius who loved nothing more than tinkering with electronics.
He wasn't motivated by fame or fortune, just the pure joy of creation.
Butcher describes one of his early creations, a device that let him make free long-distance calls, which, knowing Jobs, probably came in handy.
Sounds like the perfect setup for a buddy comedy.
The tech whiz and the charismatic hustler.
Exactly.
They were an unlikely pair, but their talents complemented each other perfectly.
They found common ground in the Homebrew Computer Club, a gathering of electronics enthusiasts who met regularly to share ideas and push the boundaries of what was possible with these early personal computers.
The Homebrew Computer Club was like the Wild West of computing.
No rules, just pure, unadulterated innovation.
It was the perfect breeding ground for someone like Wozniak to flourish.
Absolutely.
And it's there that Wozniak showed off his latest creation, the Apple I.
Now, keep in mind, this wasn't just any computer. This was a machine that you could build yourself, program yourself, and use in your own home.
It's amazing to think about it now, but back then, the idea of a personal computer was revolutionary.
And get this, Wozniak, ever the humble engineer, offered the Apple I to HP first, his employer at the time.
Can you imagine being the executive at HP who turned down the Apple I?
Talk about a missed opportunity.
It shows how difficult it is to predict the future, even for the biggest names in tech.
They just couldn't grasp the potential of what Wozniak had created.
But Jobs, with his keen sense for marketing and his ability to see the bigger picture, he understood immediately.
He saw the Apple I not just as a cool gadget, but as the start of something huge.
And that's where part 2 picks up, with Jobs' vision transforming this hobbyist project into a company poised to change the world.
So we've got this revolutionary product, the Apple I, and a dynamic duo in Jobs and Wozniak. What happens next? Well, picture this. Jobs' parents' garage, wires hanging everywhere, soldering irons glowing, and a handful of friends fueled by pizza and sheer determination.
The book really captures the raw energy of that time. They were working on a shoestring budget, scrounging for parts, pulling all-nighters. It wasn't glamorous, but you can feel the excitement, the belief that they were on the verge of something big.
And Jobs' dad, Bless his heart, he even let them take over his beloved car restoration project, sacrificing his own passion to make room for this crazy dream. Talk about a leap of faith.
It speaks volumes about the belief that surrounded Jobs. People were drawn to his energy, his conviction. Even when things were tough, he had this uncanny ability to convince everyone, including himself, that success was inevitable.
Butcher tells this great story about Ron Wayne, the third Apple co-founder you've probably never heard of. He designed the first Apple logo and the company's original manual, but he got cold feet and sold his 10% stake for a measly $800. Imagine what that would be worth today.
It's a stark reminder of the uncertainty of those early days. These weren't seasoned investors. They were taking a shot in the dark, fueled by a mix of passion and naivete. It makes you wonder how many other brilliant ideas ever saw the light of day because that leap of faith wasn't there.
Absolutely. But then enters Mike Markkula, a seasoned executive from Intel who sees the potential in Apple and injects much-needed capital and, crucially, business expertise. He becomes the adult supervision this fledgling company desperately needs. Markkula was instrumental in transforming Apple from a garage operation into a real company. He brought structure, discipline, and a focus on building a lasting organization, something that was missing in those chaotic early days. He was also the one who brought in Regis McKenna, a marketing whiz who helped shape Apple's brand and its message to the world. It's fascinating how Markkula tried to instill a more traditional corporate culture modeled after his experience at HP, with an emphasis on employee value and a collaborative environment. But as Butcher describes, even then, you can see those clashes emerging between Markkula's more measured approach and Jobs' relentless drive for control.
It was a clash of styles that would define Apple's future. Markkula provided the stability Apple needed to grow, but Jobs' uncompromising vision ultimately shaped the company's DNA.
And that vision was on full display with the launch of the Apple II. It wasn't just a technological leap forward, it was a cultural phenomenon. The Apple II was user-friendly, it was sleek, it had color graphics, and it opened up the world of personal computing to a whole new audience.
The Apple II was a game-changer, no doubt. It outsold all of its competitors combined and became the foundation for Apple's future success. It proved that there was a real market for personal computers, and it solidified Apple's position at the forefront of the revolution.
Butcher also delves into the darker side of Jobs' leadership during this period. As Apple grew, so did Jobs' ego and his need for control. He became increasingly demanding, pushing his team to the limit, even resorting to public humiliation to get his way.
This is where we start to see the seeds of the conflicts that would later lead to Jobs' ouster from Apple. His brilliance was undeniable, but so were his flaws. He was a visionary, but also a tyrant. It's a classic case of the founder's mentality clashing with the realities of running a large organization.
It makes you wonder if Apple's success, as incredible as it was, came at a cost. But that's a question for part 3, when we explore the Macintosh, Jobs' dramatic exit, and the lessons we can learn from his tumultuous journey. So the Apple II was a smash hit, a cultural phenomenon that propelled Apple to the forefront of the tech world.
But as Butcher explains, success didn't come without growing pains.
Apple, like any fast-growing company, started to feel the weight of its own ambitions.
It's almost like a classic story of a garage band that makes it big.
They're used to having fun, making music, and not worrying about the business side of things.
But then they get signed, they're on tour, and suddenly they're dealing with contracts, managers, and the pressure to keep churning out hit records.
That's a great analogy.
It's easy to see how that same dynamic played out at Apple.
Jobs was still the creative force, the driving force behind the vision, but he was also becoming increasingly dictatorial.
Jobs was surrounded by talented people, but he had a hard time sharing the spotlight.
He wasn't afraid to micromanage, to push people to the limit, even to publicly humiliate them if he felt they weren't meeting his standards.
Butcher talks about this almost mythical reality distortion field that Jobs created around himself, where everything seemed possible, and any criticism was met with dismissal.
It's that classic founder's mentality, that belief that they know best, that they're the only ones who can see the bigger picture.
But sometimes that kind of unwavering belief can blind you to other perspectives.
And that's exactly what happened when the team started work on the Macintosh.
It was a project close to Jobs' heart, a vision for a computer that was even more user-friendly and powerful than the Apple II.
But Butcher reveals how, initially, Jobs resisted the project.
He thought it was a waste of time, that the Apple II was more than enough.
But once Jobs saw the potential of the Macintosh, he became completely obsessed.
He claimed the project as his own, pushing aside the original developer, Jeff Raskin, who had the original vision.
It's a bit of a Shakespearean drama where the visionary is also the villain.
And the Macintosh, while a technological masterpiece, was also a commercial flop in its early years.
It was priced too high, it lacked the essential software that made the Apple II so popular, and it failed to live up to Jobs' grand expectations.
Even the Think Different campaign, which became so iconic later on, was initially a failure.
It's fascinating to see how Jobs, even in his most ambitious moments, was always pushing against the boundaries of what was considered possible.
He was always looking for the next big thing, the next game changer.
But sometimes that relentless drive for innovation comes at a cost.
And that cost came to a head in 1985 when Jobs was forced out of Apple.
It was a dramatic, messy affair, full of boardroom intrigue, backstabbing, and even a paternity lawsuit against Jobs by his ex-girlfriend.
It was a stark contrast to the generous way Wozniak handled his own divorce, giving his ex-wife a hefty chunk of his Apple stock.
It's a reminder that Jobs was, and still is, a complex figure.
He was capable of brilliance and ruthless ambition.
He could inspire and motivate, but he could also intimidate and alienate.
But even after being forced out of Apple, Jobs' resilience shone through.
He founded NextT, a new company focused on revolutionizing computing once again.
He secured funding from billionaire Ross Perot and launched the NextT Cube, a sleek, powerful machine with groundbreaking technology.
Jobs staged a theatrical launch event for the NextT Cube, inviting a crowd of journalists and industry insiders to witness his return.
The media coverage was huge, with every tech magazine and newspaper wanting to know what this enigmatic visionary was up to next.
But the NextT Cube, despite its brilliance, never achieved commercial success.
It was too expensive, too complicated for the average consumer, and it was overshadowed by the rise of Microsoft and IBM.
Even Bill Gates, who had been invited to the launch, skipped it and publicly dismissed the NextT Cube as nothing special.
Talk about adding insult to injury.
It's a testament to Jobs' tenacity that he never gave up.
He continued to push the boundaries of technology, to dream big, and to challenge the status quo.
And eventually his dream led him back to Apple.
But that's a story for another deep dive.
For now, let's reflect on what we've learned.
Was Jobs an accidental millionaire? A lucky guy who just happened to be in the right place at the right time?
Or was he a visionary, a disruptive force who fundamentally changed the world of computing?
Accidental millionaire leaves us with more questions than answers.
It paints a complex portrait of a man who was both brilliant and flawed, driven by ambition and haunted by his own demons.
It's a story that resonates beyond the world of technology, reminding us that even the greatest minds can be prone to hubris, that success can be both intoxicating and destructive.
The book challenges us to think critically about the legacy of Steve Jobs.
Was he a visionary who changed the world? Or was he a flawed genius who left a trail of broken relationships and unfulfilled promises?
It's a question that each of us has to answer for ourselves.
And as you ponder those questions, remember the lessons that emerge from Jobs' story. The power of passion, the importance of vision, the dangers of ego, and the constant struggle to balance innovation with humanity.
It's a story that continues to unfold even after Jobs' passing, as Apple continues to shape the world around us.
So as you navigate your own path, whether it's the world of technology or beyond, remember the power of a single idea, the importance of collaboration, and the constant need to question assumptions and challenge the status quo.
Because sometimes the most groundbreaking discoveries come from the most unexpected places. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the early days of Apple.